Petty rivalries that changed entire industries. The year is 1903. You're standing in a field in New York watching a man in a suit prepare to electrocute an elephant. There's a crowd. There are cameras. The elephant's name is Topsy. The man arranged all of this on purpose. He is one of the most celebrated inventors in American history, and he is doing this because he lost an argument. Today we're looking at petty rivalries, the ones where two people or two companies got so deep into beating each other that they accidentally changed the world. Not through vision, not through careful planning, through spite, ego, and a completely unhinged refusal to let it go. Let's start with the one that gave us both the electric chair and the modern power grid, which is honestly 2 for 1. Thomas Edison was the most famous inventor alive when a Serbian engineer named Nikola Tesla walked into his lab looking for work. Edison hired him. Tesla suggested that alternating current, AC power, was the future of electrical distribution. Edison had built his entire empire on direct current, DC, and had no interest in hearing this. He reportedly promised Tesla $50,000 to improve his DC system. Tesla did it, and Edison told him the offer had been a joke. Tesla quit. That was the beginning. What followed was Edison running one of the most unhinged public relations campaigns in history. He called AC power dangerous. He funded demonstrations where animals were publicly electrocuted with AC current to show the public how lethal it was. Dogs, calves, and eventually Topsy, a circus elephant who had killed 3 handlers and was already scheduled to be put down. Edison's team filmed her electrocution and distributed the footage as a marketing exercise. He also lobbied for AC current to be used in the newly invented electric chair, specifically so that executions would be associated with Westinghouse's name, Westinghouse being the company backing Tesla. He wanted people to say someone had been Westinghoused. He genuinely tried to make that a word. AC won anyway. Edison's DC system couldn't transmit power over long distances efficiently. Tesla's could. Every home in the world runs on AC power today. The electric chair also runs on AC power, which Edison accidentally gave us as a byproduct of trying to slander his rival. He also never acknowledged Tesla publicly for the rest of his life. Tesla died alone in a hotel room in 1943. Edison had been dead for 12 years by then, and somehow still won the PR war.
Let's move on to a rivalry that didn't produce any executions, but did accidentally invent modern brand psychology. By the late 1970s, Pepsi had been losing to Coke for decades and decided to just ask people. They ran blind taste tests in shopping malls. People tasted 2 unlabeled cups and picked their favorite. More people picked Pepsi. This was a problem for Coke. It was, on paper, objective evidence that their product was worse. Coke panicked. They reformulated. In 1985, they launched New Coke, a sweeter recipe they had tested on 200,000 people. The tests said people preferred it. They were very confident. The public response was immediate and completely unhinged. People hoarded the original. A man in Los Angeles reportedly filled his garage with cases of it. A hotline set up for complaints received 400,000 calls. 400,000 people called a phone number to complain about a soft drink. Senators were involved. There were protests. Coke reversed the decision 79 days later, brought back the original formula under the name Coca-Cola Classic, and sales went higher than they'd been before New Coke launched. Pepsi had handed them the greatest accidental marketing event in beverage history. The head of Coke's market research, the man with the 200,000 taste tests, was quietly let go. He found out people don't drink a logo with some liquid in it. They drink the logo. The liquid is almost beside the point. Every brand strategist alive today works from that assumption. Pepsi taught them that by trying to win. Speaking of trying to win and accidentally creating a new set of rules entirely. In 1983, the American video game market collapsed. Atari had been printing money for years and decided, reasonably enough from their perspective, that quality control was someone else's problem. They licensed everything. They released everything. They buried 700,000 unsold cartridges of the E.T. game in a landfill in New Mexico, which was recently excavated and confirmed because some things you have to see to believe. Retailers stopped stocking video games entirely. The whole category was considered finished. Nintendo entered the American market in 1985 with a console deliberately designed to look like a VCR because the word video game had become radioactive and they needed retailers to not immediately recognize what it was. Their American president, Minoru Arakawa, personally walked into department stores, set up demo units himself, and offered to take back anything that didn't sell. He did this for weeks, in New York, in person, while running a company. Nintendo also introduced something called the Nintendo Seal of Quality, a licensing system where only Nintendo-approved games could run on the NES. They controlled what went on their platform entirely. Atari sued. Nintendo won. Every console maker in the world, PlayStation, Xbox, every one of them, operates on a licensed platform model today. Nintendo invented that because Atari had turned video game into a phrase that made retailers physically flinch. I find this one genuinely funny because Atari had everything. They just got lazy, and the company that replaced them worked harder than anyone had ever worked in that industry, and then the entire industry copied their rulebook. Absolutely cooked. At least Atari's failure was dramatic. This next falling out was so quiet that nobody's entirely sure what caused it. Carl and Theo Albrecht built Aldi together. They'd taken over their mother's small grocery store in post-war Germany and turned it into one of the most ruthlessly efficient retail operations in the country. Same products every week, no frills, brutally low prices. By 1960, they had over 300 stores. Then they stopped speaking to each other. The most commonly reported reason is a disagreement over whether to sell cigarettes. Theo thought the theft risk wasn't worth it. Carl disagreed, or possibly the other way around. Neither brother ever publicly confirmed this. They divided Germany geographically, Theo taking the north and Carl taking the south, and ran entirely separate companies that happened to share a name. Theo Albrecht's Aldi Nord now operates Trader Joe's in the United States. Carl Albrecht's Aldi Sud operates the stores called Aldi in the UK. They are different companies. If you've ever wondered why Trader Joe's and Aldi feel weirdly similar, same private label philosophy, same no-frills approach, it's because they're run by the descendants of two brothers who stopped talking over what might have been a cigarette disagreement in 1960. Theo was kidnapped in 1971 and held for 17 days. He negotiated his own ransom down from 7 million marks and then attempted to claim the final amount as a tax deduction. The German tax authorities rejected this. He appealed. He was worth billions of Deutschmarks, and he appealed a tax ruling on his own kidnapping ransom.
Honestly, respect it. The brothers communicated only through lawyers until they died, Carl in 2014, Theo in 2010. Stores bearing their shared name were sometimes located directly across the street from each other. Right. This last one I want to take a bit more seriously because I think it deserves it. Mikhail Kalashnikov was a farmer son from Siberia who became a tank commander, got wounded in battle in 1941, and spent his recovery designing a better weapon for Soviet soldiers. The AK-47 went into production in 1947. Roughly 100 million have since been manufactured. It is, by an enormous margin, the most produced firearm in human history. Eugene Stoner was an American engineer who designed the AR-15 for the U.S. military in the late 1950s. The platform became the M16, the standard American military rifle, and the basis for the most widely owned civilian firearm in the United States. The two men were driven entirely by Cold War competition, each trying to build something that would outperform the other country's weapon on a battlefield. They almost certainly never met. Kalashnikov spent decades saying he was proud. He'd built it for defense of his country. He had no regrets. Then, in 2013, a few months before he died at 94, he wrote a letter to the head of the Russian Orthodox Church. He asked if his rifle had taken lives, did that make him responsible for those deaths? He called the pain in his soul unbearable. He said the question had no answer he could find. The church wrote back and told him he bore no moral responsibility. He died shortly after.
He reportedly said in an interview once that he would have preferred to invent something people could use in agriculture. A lawnmower, he said. He was a farmer's son from Siberia. He built the most replicated weapon in history and spent the last part of his life wondering if he should have just fixed tractors. That one gets me every time, I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, if you want to watch the Accidental Discoveries video next, it's right there on screen. That one's got a man who took a particle beam to the skull and finished his shift, so if this vibe worked for you, that one's even more unhinged. And as always, bro, gotcha.